Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. In the heart of a mid-sized American city, nestled between a fading strip of diners and an overturned community park, lies the neighborhood of Willow Creek. It is a place with a reputation steeped in shadow, not for its scenic beauty, but rather for the secrets clamoring beneath its surface. Murmurs of unsettling occurrences had long clung to the brick facades and whispered through the thickets of overgrown bushes. Still, none were quite as shattering as the events that unfolded in the autumn of 2015. Sheila Peters, a beloved local librarian, was known for her warmth and her uncanny ability to remember the names of every child who passed through her library doors. That early September evening, she was to close up the library, as she did every Wednesday, before heading to the weekly book club meeting at the cafe just down the street. But when the clock struck closing time, Sheila never walked through those familiar doors again. When she failed to arrive at the cafe, a few friends exchanged worried glances. Minutes turned to hours, and desperation seeped into the hearts of those who knew her best. Willow Creek was accustomed to the echoes of silence, but this profound absence brought with it a disquieting stillness. As the police were called to investigate, they were unaware that they were stepping into a complex web that would challenge every aspect of their investigative skills. Friends, neighbors, and family would soon find themselves intertwined in a narrative that no one could have anticipated, a story that would forever change the fabric of their cherished community and lead to the pursuit of the truth buried deep within the truth. Buried deep within the shadows. The victim, Sheila Peters, was more than just a face in the neighborhood. She was its lifeblood. An avid reader, she often could be found tucked away in her favorite corner of the Willow Creek Library, surrounded by the enchanting world of stories that transported her far from reality. Each shelf held not only books, but the heartbeats of her communicator's laughter, hushed conversations, and countless memories shared over well-worn paperbacks. But Sheila was also a keeper of secrets, a confessor to many. FD8. She thrived on her role as an informal counselor to anyone seeking solace in the library's quiet embrace. Her life was predictable yet fulfilling, a daily rhythm punctuated by her passion for literature and the warmth of her neighbors' company. But alongside the gentle smile she offered was the weight of solitude she bore. She had lost her husband 3 years earlier, the relationship they had forged now resonating as echoes in empty rooms, a haunting reminder of love suddenly extinct. As news of her disappearance spread, the layers of Sheila's life began to peel back, revealing a mix of admiration and anger. To some, she was the perfect confidante, rich with wisdom and empathy. To others, the target of envy, noisy whispers drawing lines between friendships. Old rivalries and hidden resentments bubbled to the surface, nearly overshadowing the collective grief. It was revealed that Sheila had volunteered tirelessly in her community, organizing charity events and book drives, always putting others' needs before her own. Yet, even in death, Sheila's life unraveled into question. Who among those who cherished her had the capacity for darkness? And what secrets lay buried beneath the kindness she had so readily offered? The more they discovered about her, the more the neighborhood realized the profound impact of her absence. A woman who had fostered connections now found herself ensnared in an intricate plot, whether intentional or not, where love and jealousy danced uncomfortably in silence. Willow Creek was poised to reveal its secrets, but would the truth pay homage to the woman's quiet legacy? The crime scene. 2 days after Sheila Peters was reported missing, the dark clouds above Willow Creek seemed to mirror the town's anxious heart. As teams of officers canvassed the area, search parties formed, and residents gathered, united by a shared hope for her safe return. But the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows as detectives received a call that would pivot the investigation from a missing person case to something far more sinister. A dog walker, traversing the overgrown trails of Cedar Grove Park, a secluded patch of woods frequented by fearwards, stumbled upon a scene that would haunt the community. There, hidden beneath a blanket of fallen leaves and crumbling twigs, lay the lifeless body of Sheila Peters. The unmistakable scent of decay, mingled with damp earth, enveloped those who arrived at the scene, triggering primal, an instinct inherent shish. Here, the park was cordoned off, a sterile barrier against the grotesque violation of nature. Detectives meticulously examined the area, step by careful step. The rustle of their movements sounded sharp against the heavy silence. Sheila was dressed in the vibrant cardigan she had on the day she disappeared, but her expression, shrouded by the cruelty of her end, left a lingering darkness in the eyes of those who knew her. Forensics moved in quickly, employing the tools of their trade to gather evidence with a reverence that singularly focused on bringing justice to life. Detailed photographs captured the scene at the bent twigs, a single pearl earring that had lost its partner somewhere in the chaos, and the unmistakable marks on her wrists, suggesting a struggle fought heroically against a predator lurking in the shadows. Questions ballooned in the minds of every investigator present. Did she know her attacker? Had she fought? And why here? In this forgotten corner of their town, the characteristics of the crime spoke loudly. It was personal. There was an intimacy in the violence that suggested someone close enough to understand the intricacies of Sheila's life here. Betrayal, writ large, against the backdrop of trust. As night fell and the first responders packed away their equipment, the air grew heavy with contemplation. The community had lost one of its own, and the resolve to uncover the truth grew dense in the gathering darkness that enveloped Willow Creek. What started in the glow of library lights had erupted into a chilling narrative, adorned with shadows, secrets, and unanswered questions that begged to be unearthed. The early investigation. In the days following the discovery of Sheila's body, Willow Creek clung to the fragments of their fractured reality. A pall of grief hung over the town, punctuated by the murmurs of neighbors gathering in small groups, eyes darting with suspicion. In the midst of this turmoil, lead investigator Detective Mark Reynolds arrived on the scene, a seasoned officer adept at navigating the labyrinth of human emotion that often accompanied such case. Reynolds knew the importance of swift action. The initial hours after a crime, such as this, often proved pivotal. With the forensic team still sorting through the evidence, he convened his officers in the dim office of the local precinct. Maps of the Cedar Grove Park area, crisscrossed with lines marking possible points of interest, served as a visual representation of the tangled web that was about to unfurl. New faces of officers met the grave expressions of their colleagues, each taking a moment to absorb the gravity of their task. "We start with the basics," Reynolds instructed. Sensing their collective impatience, interviews, timelines, neighbors, anyone who saw Sheila in the days leading up to her disappearance could be key. The room hummed to life as officers dispersed like ripples across a pond, each mindful of the weight in their hands. The first stop was Sheila's workplace, the library. Sitting before shelves of her favorites, staff members struggled to contain the sorrow that surged beneath their professionalism, and in turn recalled seeing Sheila speaking animatedly with a man a week before her disappearance. Someone none of them recognized. The description, a tall figure, striking green eyes, to hushed speculation about a potential connection. Did he share a moment of warmth, or was there an intensity that felt wrong? As dark thoughts rolled in. Ellen and Thomas, a couple known for their desire to control community events, now found themselves interrogated. Had jealousy arisen over Sheila's popularity? Lives intertwined in the fabric of the community began to unravel, each thread tugging at the truth buried beneath layers of untold stories. Simultaneously, Detective Reynolds initiated a search for digital footprints. Sheila's online presence, her emails, and messages became paramount in piecing together her recent interactions. In the depths of cyberspace, a digital trail bore the potential to illuminate motives and connections that lay hidden in the shadows. But as investigators dug deeper, the labyrinth seemed to offer more questions than answers, a maze crafted by relationships both tender and tumultuous. The case was evolving, and with it came the dawning realization that each inquiry could lead to unearthing a shadow of trust and betrayal interwoven with the very essence of Willow Creek. In a neighborhood where everyone felt they knew Sheila intimately, it was clear that secrets lingered just out of reach, waiting to come to light. A dead ends. As autumn deepened in Willow Creek, the landscape transformed into a patchwork of browns and golds. But the mood within the community remained distinctly gray. Detective Mark Reynolds had hoped that fresh leads might breathe life into the investigation. Yet each twist and turn seemed to coil tighter into a maze of dead ends. Days stretched into weeks, and as the media coverage dwindled, the initial fervor for answers stalled, leaving only echoes of uncertainty. The man with the green eyes had proved elusive descriptions were vague, and though several solid leads were pursued, all bore witness to the fact that no one could pinpoint him in their memory. The library surveillance tapes, once a beacon of hope, showed only blurred figures and shared space without clarity. Instead of resolving the mystery, they added layers to the chaos, serving merely to amplify the haunting question: who had last seen Sheila? And why couldn't anyone recall the very face they were searching for? Ellen and Thomas's alibi held firm, each proving they were at home on the night of her disappearance, surrounded by a stream of willing witnesses. Frustration gnawed at Reynolds' reserves as more suspects emerged from the shadows. Charles, a disaffected patron of the library who openly expressed scorn toward Sheila's numerous initiatives, emerged as another name. Interviews with his family painted a disconcerting picture of a man spiraling out of control, but attempts to locate him yielded no results. Months of sporadic interactions with counselors and physicians left no breadcrumbs to follow. He seemed to drift further into the ether, leaving only silence in his wake. Local rumors began to merge with despair. The community's denial clung stubbornly to the potentiality of it all. It couldn't have been someone they knew. As each lead turned cold, whispers entered the air that perhaps Sheila's death was part of a larger pattern. A serial perpetrator with motives so twisted that they extended beyond their understanding, each insipid connection founded on darkness. Detective Reynolds gathered his team late one evening. The weight of his exhaustion pooled in his expression as they delved into their findings. "We've got to prepare for the possibility that this was a crime of opportunity," he warned, hoping to reinvigorate their focus. "We can no longer just look for motive among what we once considered allies. The person who took Sheila might just be anyone, blending in like the rest. We can't allow ourselves to be distracted." As the night wore on, the room filled with the low hum of research and notes being shot. The faint flush of a street lamp outside flickered into their workspace, reflecting a harsh truth upon their faces. Somewhere in the folds of Willow Creek, a killer had evaded the net of justice, a specter lurking in the daily rhythms of a community, unaware of the horrors concealed within its midst. As frustration mounted, the haunting reality loomed sometimes. Answers lay hidden in the darkness, teasing insight yet demanding patience in an investigation fraught with ambiguity. A break in the case. The early November arrived with a chilling bite, the air pregnant with anticipation as leaves crunched underfoot, and the bustle of holiday preparations permeated the streets of Willow Creek. In a corner cafe, the steam from cups of coffee mingled with hushed conversations of a community still grappling with grief. Yet, within the walls of the precinct, a glimmer of hope flickered to life as Detective Mark Reynolds received a call that would change the course of the investigation. It was a tip in the form of an anonymous email sent to the department's tip line with few details but aching urgency. "If you want to know about Sheila," it read, "talk to Rachel." The name was a dim beacon in an otherwise obstructed view. Rachel Montgomery, a student librarian who had volunteered alongside Sheila on several occasions, once an unremarkable figure in their bustled case file. Suddenly, she belonged at the forefront. Reynolds wasted no time. He gathered his team and made their way to the local cafe that served as Rachel's regular haunt. Just as he entered, he spotted her hunched over a worn notebook, engrossed in thought, framed by the warm glow of Edison bulbs. Upon noticing Reynolds, her demeanor shifted from contemplation to anxiety. He had no doubt the news was about Sheila. Once seated at a small table, Reynolds explained that they were interested in her relationship with Sheila, seeking anything that might help. Rachel's voice trembled at first, but surged into a current of urgency. She spoke of a budding friendship that had deepened over shared projects and late-night book discussions, but marked with shadows mirrors of a man who seemed too interested in Sheila's life, hanging around late library nights, persistently charming. He was often there asking flirtatious questions, Rachel recalled, nerves tingling in her fingers. But it always felt like more than that. One night, I saw him argue with her. He was heated. I think he wanted something and she was pushing back. I could feel it. He wouldn't stop coming around. I thought of saying something to her, but she always brushed it off, saying it was just harmless attention. As Rachel spoke, a memory sparked. She remembered the man's face detailed in hushed phrases, thin, wiry and alarming green eyes that seemed to bore into their conversations. With notes hastily scrawled on paper napkins, Reynolds could hardly contain himself as Rachel detailed their last encounter before Sheila went missing. He confronted her about a book we were working on together. It was almost like possession, you know? Hesitance weighed heavily in her voice. It scared me, but I didn't know how to intervene. The pieces of her testimony, wedged with a violent truth, crystallized into Reynolds' mind perhaps. This man was not merely a flitting figure, but a crucial piece of the puzzle. A threat that lingered, but a fresh lead in hand. Reynolds pledged to dig deeper into this new suspect. The details would shape their next steps as they prepared the search for the man who had been lost in the shadows of a place that promised safety. As they exited the cafe, the wind began to howl, feeling like a herald for the storm now brewing within Willow Creek. A storm which, with any luck, was closing in on a long-awaited confrontation with the darkness that had haunted them all. The suspect. Days turned to nights, and the shadows grew deeper with each setting sun. As Detective Mark Reynolds honed in on their new suspect, his name was Ben Stewart, a man of 36 with a sparse history, marred by temporary jobs and a collection of minor infractions that painted a troubling portrait. The whispers of the library clerks had not missed the unsettling aura that seemed to follow him. Even among those passionate about literature, there was an air of unease when he and Reynolds and his team utilized every legal option available to trace Ben's movements, sending officers to his last known address, a small, nondescript apartment on the outskirts of Willow Creek. It was modest, cluttered with stacks of unread books, but unmistakably solitary. Inside, the scent of stale coffee wafted in the air, mingled with the unmistakable musk of old newspapers and forgotten nostalgia. As the detectives canvassed the area, they encountered neighbors who offered meager insights. Ben was often seen lingering at the library late into the evenings, staring at Sheila as she assisted patrons, but nothing more. Bizarrely quiet. A loner. Bizarrely quiet. No one had ever thought much of him until Sheila disappeared. But now whispers turned to fingers pointed. Speculation morphing into certainty in light of Rachel's testimony. Armed with information, Reynolds orchestrated an interview with Ben at the precinct, steeling himself for whatever demeanor might lay beneath the surface. When he entered the room, he found Ben reclined casually in a chair, the very picture of calm amidst an ocean of chaos. Dressed in a threadbare hoodie, his green eyes emerged like shards of glass biasing, observant yet untouched by the gravity of reason. Reynolds introduced himself and navigated the conversation gently. At first, you and Sheila were acquaintances, right? Spoke often at the library. Ben nodded, yet there was a flicker of something unreadable behind his composed facade. What was it like working with her? Just fine, he replied, feigning disinterest. She helped a lot of people. A real community person. The detective pressed. But not you? You didn't feel a connection with her? A moment of silence hung between them, heavy and weighty, before Ben's expression shifted, a narrowing of his eyes and a slight tightening of the jaw that gave away a churning mind. I didn't need her help. His tone lacked warmth, hanging thick with something akin to contempt. There it was, the breath of an underlying resentment, a clue beneath the surface. As the questions turned to specifics surrounding the night of Sheila's disappearance, Ben's facade began to crack. The answers were vague, filled with convoluted claims, being at home alone. Yet his alibi lacked the rigor of truth. Reynolds could sense that he was holding back, an instinct refined through years of experience, yearning for something deeper below his practiced exterior. "What were you doing on the evening of September 8th? Reynolds pressed, his voice steady yet icy. "You know, the last time anyone saw Sheila alive." Ben's composure faltered momentarily, a mere twitch of his lips that screamed of buried tension. "I told you I was just home," he shot back, yet the defensive tone hung in the air, palpable and alarming, like the fleeting sound of rustling leaves before the storm. As Reynolds exited the room, he exchanged glances with his team. They were left with a gnawing sense of urgency. They needed to dig deeper into the web of Ben Stewart's existence. With a man as evasive as he, the investigation's next steps might lead them toward unearthing the truth of confrontation with the darkness that left Sheila Peters silenced, and a ripple of fear throbbing through a community in search of healing. The trial. As winter settled over Willow Creek, a hush blanketed the community, save for the tense anticipation that filled the air as the trial of Ben Stewart approached. The courtroom, a modest yet sterile expanse, was transfigured into a space where collective grief met the pursuit of justice. With members of the community filing in, their expressions reflected a mosaic of hope, anger, and sorrow. They had entrusted the system to unravel the truth behind the loss of their beloved librarian, Detective Mark Reynolds. Now burdened with the memories of late-night interrogations and heart-wrenching testimonies, sat in the front row, his heart heavy but steadfast. He had poured every ounce of his being into the past few months, unearthing details that painted a vivid narrative of Ben Stewart's tumultuous interactions with Sheila. The evidence and testimonies had converged into a case that he hoped would resonate deeply enough to sway the jury's heart. The proceedings began with the prosecution outlining the case, detailing Sheila's last known movements, the emerging connection to Ben, and the eerie tension of their final encounter. Rachel Montgomery took the stand, voice steady yet trembling, recounting her observations of Ben's strange infatuation with Sheila, obsession, masked as admiration. Her words seemed to fill the air and settle ominously over the courtroom, intertwining with a sorrow that echoed with each silence. However, the defense was poised, striving to salvage their client, painting him as a misunderstood recluse who had been vilified by circumstance. They dissected the prosecution's claims, questioning Rachel's perspective and challenging her reliability, suggesting that the connections drawn were mere coincidences, heightened by emotions running high in a town overwhelmed by. Witness after witness recalled the unsettling feeling that accompanied Ben's presence, but the defense countered with the notion that mere unease should not equate to culpability. A shadow detached from the anger divulged through testimonies loomed larger as the jury wrestled with the nuances of doubt and proof, every argument an intricate dance of reason and morality. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived, a culmination of months' worth of work, suffering, and the intricate mapping of life lost. As the jury retreated to deliberate, the minutiae of the trial hung thick and tension swelled in the courtroom like a storm cloud ready to burst. Detective Reynolds sat in agonizing silence, glancing at the family sitting behind Sheila's empty chair, their grief palpable, rooted in an absence that echoed through the halls of justice. When the jury returned, a hush fell upon the courtroom. Each heart pounded with anticipation, the fate of a man entwined with the shadows of a victim, resting precariously in the balance. The four-person rose, their voice steady as they delivered the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ben Stewart, guilty of the murder of Sheila Peters. Relief flooded through the audience like a tidal wave crashing against a fragile shore. Gasps and tears filled the courtroom, where sorrow and vindication collided in an emotional whirlwind. Reynolds felt a lump rise in his throat. The culmination of every sleepless night and countless interrogations had led to this a moment of clarity amidst the chaos. As Ben was escorted away, his expression remained unreadable, but there were whispers of victory within the community. Yet the echoes of grief still lingered heavy in the air. A life extinguished, a legacy defined by passion and kindness, had demanded recognition and retribution, a reminder that shadows cannot escape the light forever. Willow Creek would continue to walk with the memory of Sheila, ensuring her story would forever be etched in the heart of a town learning to heal from its scars, embracing her spirit as a guiding light against the darkness. The aftermath. The echoes of the trial reverberated through Willow Creek, long after the courtroom doors closed on Ben Stewart. The community, once enveloped in a dense fog of uncertainty and fear, began to slowly emerge from the shadows. Yet the scars of loss remained palpable. In the weeks that followed the verdict, residents grappled with an uneasy sense of relief. Justice had been served, yet it came at the cost of a beloved soul whose absence still cast a long shadow. Detective Mark Reynolds found himself drawn to the library, to the very space where Sheila had so affectionately tended to her patrons. The wooden shelves felt like guardians of memories, holding stories not just of fiction, but of lives intertwined. He approached the familiar corner where Sheila had spent countless hours surrounded by the books that had inspired connection and understanding, felt an overwhelming longing. In the community's attempt to honor Sheila's legacy, the library initiated a memorial fund in her name, aimed at fostering literacy programs for children and young adults. As the fund gained traction, local businesses and residents came together, each contributing pieces of their livelihoods to create a vibrant tapestry of unity. A reading corner was soon established, complete with vibrant murals and bookshelves, adorned with the title Sheila had cherished, turning loss into a nurturing opportunity for others. Yet, even as life resumed its pace, the undercurrents of grief lingered. Rachel Montgomery found herself processing her own feelings of guilt. Despite her intentions, she had grappled with the weight of having spoken up when no one else did, often wondering whether she could have altered the course of events had she acted sooner. In the following months, she sought solace and understanding in the community's tightly knit support groups, where shared grief became a tool for healing. News of the case traveled beyond the borders of Willow Creek, becoming a haunting reminder of the fragility of safety in familiar places. Detective Reynolds found himself fielding calls from journalists seeking insight into the investigation, their interest often tinged with a morbid curiosity that clashed with his mission for respect. The town's heartbeat echoed in the background of the stories told. This was not just a crime, but a loss that spoke volumes about the innocence they had taken for granted. As winter waned, the cherry blossoms began to bloom in Willow Creek, a symbol of renewal and hope. Events in Sheila's memory began to flourish, enriching the community as children and parents filled the library's new reading corner with laughter. Reynolds often stopped by, feeling the warmth of healing wrap around him as he observed families connecting over the books that once bridged the gap between Sheila and her young patron. Yet a part of him always looked back, still contemplating the man who had cast such a vast shadow over their lives. Unresolved questions painted the narrative of a community in transition. The aftermath of Sheila's death was not merely a reckoning of justice served. It continued to evolve into an urgency for vigilance, kindness, and an affirmation of community in the face of darkness. As seasons changed, the citizens of Willow Creek held Sheila's memory close, weaving it into the fabric of their lives. She had become an enduring light, a reminder that even amidst tragedy, love and care could blossom anew, prompting everyone to nurture their connections, protect their tones, and ensure that stories, like those found in the pages of your beloved book, would always be passed down and cherished by generations to come. Reflection. A year had passed since Ben Stewart was convicted for the murder of Sheila Peters, and Willow Creek wore its grief like a heavy cloak. Though some parts of it had begun to feel lighter, Detective Mark Reynolds often found himself wandering along the peaceful river that threaded through the town, the waters moving, resembling the gentle flux of time itself. Each ripple carried the weight of his memories, from the initial shock of Sheila's disappearance to the hard-earned resolution of her case. He had devoted himself deeply to the pursuit of justice rather than accepting the aftermath as closure. There was something inherently bittersweet about what they had sought. The trial became a vessel for the community's pain, but also their resilience. The memorial fund flourishing under Sheila's name stood testament, a beacon of hope amid the hierarchy, a testament to the lives she had shaped, reminding everyone of the light she once brought. As he stood by the riverbank, the breeze whisked through the branches, gently rustling the leaves. The spring sun bathed the area in a warm glow, almost as if nature itself was healing. But as sunsets turned to dawns, the memories of moments lost still danced in Reynolds' mind, a constant reflection, the drive towards vigilance within his community.